whether or not you're for or against affirmative action, it's still important to see how affirmative action has negatively impacted Asian American groups, and you can be for affirmative action and still be critical of Harvard.
Harvard students reacting to the ongoing trial challenging the admissions policy at one of the most prestigious Ivy League schools in the country. The lawsuit claiming Harvard engages in racial balancing by putting a quota on Asian American applicants. Defense attorney Bob Bianchi joins us now to really lay this out for us and what's happening, because it has implications for our universities across the country.
Absolutely, it's huge. So we had to start with some wonky constitutional law. The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment says the government can't pass any law that discriminates based on race, sex, national origin, etc. So people would ask, how is affirmative action allowed? Well, earlier decisions said so long as you don't have a quota system in these educational institutions, that if you have to bring diversity, you can have race-conscious admissions. But Sandra Day O'Connor wrote an opinion years ago that said, eventually, this is a Band-Aid, it's not a cure. And when we get to a point where we have race that's equal or balanced, then we may need to overcome that, because it's a compelling state interest to have diversity. But when you have that under the constitutional law, you have to have strict scrutiny. That is, it has to be narrowly tailored, and once the object is achieved, you need to end it. And that's what this case is all about. Interestingly, first time, it's minority people who are indicating here that they're being discriminated upon based on these policies. And I'll just say one last thing I think is really important. At this point in time, over 50% of the students at Harvard are minorities. So I think there's a very good argument with the change of the Supreme Court with Justices Gorsuch and the new Justice Kavanaugh, that we are going to have a scenario where they're going to say that balance has been achieved, there's no longer a compelling state interest, and it's time to revisit whether affirmative action is appropriate.
Wow, so they could throw it out.
Yeah, I think they could. Now, the court can do two things. It can narrowly go into Harvard and say, we're going to be very narrow, that we feel that this particular policy at Harvard is problematic, but not overcome the entire affirmative action program. But I think that when you have Justice, remember, Scalia was gone. He was dead at the last decision that was made in 2016. And in that one was a white woman who indicated she was being discriminated upon because she was more qualified as an applicant. And now all these decisions are 5-4 decisions. And now you have 2 new conservative justices. Watch out.
The problem is there's no hard and true way to come up with, by definition, whether or not discrimination exists here. You have economists coming into the picture who are some of the key players in all of this, who are coming up with all these different methodologies to say it does or does not, right?
Yeah, well, these individuals are trying to say, and there's all these experts that are going to be testifying, It's going to really be an expert case, that, of course, diversity in schools is good. No one would really disagree with that. The question becomes, from a constitutional point of view, has the compelling state interest of diversity been met? And if so, then we can no longer, under the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, we can no longer discriminate, if you will, against non-minority citizens, because the goal has been achieved.
Fascinating story. 1,600 freshmen admitted every year out of 42,000 applications.
Yeah.
That's a big sample.
Yeah, it is. And they have lots of people that they can point to, and I think the most compelling factor they're going to point to is you've achieved the goal. Over 50% are minorities. The goal has been achieved. So to continue policies that allow or disallow white people or non-minorities from getting in is no longer needed, because the goal has been met.
Very interesting. Bob, thanks for shaking that out for us, okay?
Pleasure.
You think the plaintiff wins in this case?
I think that there's going to be a change, yeah.
By the way,
Bianchi,
very revealing that Harvard's going to have to reveal their admissions data in this case.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've kept that close.
They clearly don't want to do that. If you read these articles, you can see they're conflating. It's all over the place as to what exactly is the key to what they're doing.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Right on. Thank you.
Good
Second debate last